Alright, the new M2 Mac Pro, the pinnacle of Macintosh computers. That's fairly ambiguous at the moment, so let's talk about everything we know about this new Mac Pro so far. The Mac Pro is Apple's top-of-the-line desktop computer with incredible specs and a price that's also quite high-end, that we don't have a clear answer on. There have been many back-and-forth rumors about how much this device might cost, with a few leaks saying that it will start really high, but some around the same as before. So with that said, for the starter price, to be safe, I'll say around $6,000, the same starter price as the current generation, which again is super high and super niche, hence why Apple has likely been apprehensive about releasing it. So we'll see if that's true. Let's keep going. Now how about that design? The Mac Pro has seen many different revisions over the years, ranging from some sort of trash can design to a more recent cheese grater. So what's next? Well, I can't tell for certain, but it is expected, according to Mark Gurman, leaker from Bloomberg, that Apple intends to retain the Mac Pro's staple upgradability, which includes expandable RAM, storage, etc., meaning we'll likely see something new, but possibly something similar to the cheese grater design, which does get the job done in that regard. And now one thing that I usually harp on Apple for, the connectivity. Now we're not going to spend too much time on this, but I do think that Apple will do pretty fine in this regard. Mac Pros are usually okay port selection wise, which is fantastic, but it might be that we won't see many, if any, USB-A ports, which Apple has been deviating away from, which is a shame, but let's hope that I'm wrong about that though. But the big reason why this device hasn't seen an upgrade in a while is the internal specs. The Apple Silicon chips have been incredibly successful and useful for many individuals. The MacBook Airs, Pros, and Mac Studios have been great and powerful, and speaking of the Mac Studios, those have kind of been the Mac Pro stand-ins for a little while, because there hasn't been a new Mac Pro released in years, and that's because M2 has been fairly difficult for Apple to improve upon for the top-of-the-line desktop. The Mac Pro needs a CPU with incredible performance, something that smokes the M1 Ultra in the Mac Studio. That CPU being called the M2 Extreme, which would essentially be the combination of two M2 Ultra chips, per Mark Gurman, the Bloomberg Apple leaker. That would definitely provide some incredible performance, but at again an incredibly high price, which would make the Mac Pro even more niche than it already is. To give an idea, here are the benchmarks of the typical M2 chips compared to M1, and here are the M1 Pros, M1 Maxes, and the M1 Ultra, and then here's the potential M2 Extreme. Really incredible, but at the same time, will it be worth it? That's the predicament that Apple is currently in, because at the moment, it does seem that the M2 Extreme chip has been cancelled, because that's a ton of R&D for a potentially super niche product. Therefore, it's likely we'll see an M2 Ultra chip in the Mac Pro bare minimum, but as for the future of that M2 Extreme chip, to be determined. And now for the storage. Apple, as you may know, is really bad at this game. The current Mac Pro starts with a fairly low storage, which is pretty shameful, frankly, especially given that it starts at $6,000. But it is expandable, so although Apple might start the new Mac Pro with low storage, thankfully it might still be upgradable, fingers crossed. So hopefully we won't have to worry about that. And lastly, how about that release date? Well, there's nothing official, unfortunately. Even the leakers are wary of saying anything because things seem kinda dry right now. All they do is point out that it will likely be released in 2023. If I were to make a guess though, it could be announced when the other Macs are released in spring 2023. However, it could also be released later on, maybe in the summer. That really depends on Apple's ability to resolve its internal spec situation. So let's keep our hopes up and move on to the discussion. So the M2 Mac Pro, is it worth it? Well, to keep this short, yes, for those who need the power. But for most people though, the M2 Mac Studio will suffice whenever it releases. In fact, if you need a powerful Mac computer, the M1 Mac Studio might be enough for you. They all can cover nearly everyone's performance needs with very little drop-off. However, for those who want the greatest performance possible, yeah, you'll probably want to wait for the new M2 Mac Pro if you can. Apple Silicon has not disappointed at all, really. It's likely that Apple is just trying to ensure that the consumer can get the best performance possible possible while also maximizing its profits, which will also result in us waiting a little longer. So if you can wait for it, I'd say go for the M2 Mac Pro. But if you can't, then that's fine. There are many other options that Apple currently has that will most certainly suffice for you. And that was my overview of the new M2 Mac Pro, and this was a fairly bare bones rundown of the device so far. But there will likely be more news about it in the next few months, so stay tuned for that. And of course, I hope to see you again. My name is Seerooster. It's spelled like Cyrus, pronounced like Sea Rooster, just take out the ter. Thank you very much for watching and have a wonderful day. Peace.